terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Carl Jung. There are moments in life when a line must be drawn, not in anger, not in pride, but in self-respect. These moments don't always scream. Sometimes they whisper through the fatigue in your bones, the tightness in your chest, the silent prayers that beg for peace. You don't always see them clearly when they arrive. They come disguised as confusion, as guilt, as the feeling that maybe you're asking for too much. But these moments are sacred. They are the places where the soul says, no more. And yet, so many of us hesitate at this threshold. We have been taught that kindness means tolerating everything, that love means enduring abuse, that forgiveness means silence, that boundaries mean disconnection. But this is not true. This is not holy. This is not healing. And I must say to you, there are things the soul must never agree to. There are behaviors that erode the human spirit like slow poison. And if you do not name them, you may begin to believe they are normal. If you do not protect yourself, you may begin to lose yourself. In my work, I have seen what happens when a person tolerates too much. They shrink. They twist themselves into versions that no longer resemble the truth of who they are. They become anxious, depressed, physically sick. Their dreams vanish. Their eyes dim. Their voice fades. And all the while, the world may still call them good, still call them strong, still call them patient. But I will not call this strength. I will call it survival. And survival, while noble, is not the same as living. So let me speak plainly. There are behaviors no person should ever tolerate, not because you are better than others, but because your soul is sacred, not because you are judging them, but because you have learned to protect your light. These are not the mistakes of imperfect people. We are all imperfect. These are the choices of those who have refused to see themselves, who weaponize others to avoid meeting their own pain, who manipulate and distort and blame until you are exhausted and unsure whether you are the problem. And so I begin with the first behavior no one should ever tolerate: persistent manipulation. Manipulation is the art of making others feel responsible for emotions that do not belong to them. It is when someone distorts your words, denies your experiences, and reshapes reality so that they remain the victim or the hero but never the cause. It's subtle. It can be wrapped in charm or intelligence, but it is an erosion of truth. It's an emotional fog that leaves you questioning your memory, your motives, your value. And when this fog becomes your atmosphere, you lose the ability to trust yourself. You begin to ask for permission to feel. You begin to explain your boundaries as if they are crimes. This is unacceptable. A relationship must be built on clarity, not control. Second, you must never tolerate chronic blame without accountability. There are those who never apologize, not because they are never wrong, but because their ego cannot withstand the vulnerability of imperfection. Every conflict becomes your fault. Every misunderstanding becomes your failure. And even when they are caught in clear wrongdoing, they will find a way to twist the story so that you carry the burden. This pattern is not about resolution, it's about power. And when someone is more invested in being right than in being real, you are not in a relationship, you are in a performance. Third, never tolerate emotional neglect disguised as stoicism. There are people who withhold affection, empathy, presence, not because they are incapable, but because they use detachment as control. They make you beg for scraps of attention. They pretend they don't understand your needs. They disappear when it matters most and return as if nothing happened. They call it space. They call it independence. But you feel like you are starving emotionally and being told to be grateful. This too is unacceptable. Love is not the absence of harm. Love is the presence of care. Fourth, do not tolerate ridicule or belittling, even in the name of humor. There are those who mock your dream, dismiss your fears, make you the punchline in their quest for superiority. They say, "I'm just joking." But the wound does not laugh, and the wound remembers. And there is no intimacy in a connection where one person feels small to make the other feel big. This is not love. This is domination. And your soul does not exist to be the stage on which others perform their ego. Fifth, never tolerate the invalidation of your feelings. When someone constantly tells you that you're too sensitive, too emotional, overreacting, what they are really saying is, I refuse to understand you. Emotional invalidation is not just insensitive, it is soul-crushing. It teaches you to mistrust your inner compass. It teaches you to suppress your truth in exchange for belonging. But the belonging you gain through betrayal of self is not real. It is captivity. And you deserve more than to live as a muted version of yourself. Sixth, you must not tolerate the erasure of your individuality. There are people who cannot love what they cannot control, who see your uniqueness as a threat, who constantly try to mold you, advise you, fix you, not out of love, but out of discomfort with your autonomy. They may call it guidance. They may say they want the best for you. But if love does not allow you to be fully yourself, it is not love, it is possession. And the soul withers in the hands of someone who cannot let it be free. Seventh, never tolerate cycles of abuse followed by grand apologies that lead back to the same harm. Apologies without changed behavior are manipulation. They are the rope that keeps you tied to a pattern you cannot escape. They offer hope without healing. And each time you forgive without repair, your sense of worth erodes. Forgiveness is holy, but it is not foolish. It must be paired with discernment. You are not obligated to repeat a lesson just because someone refuses to learn it. Eighth, do not tolerate indifference to your pain. Indifference is the death of empathy. When someone consistently meets your vulnerability with silence, distraction, or contempt, they are telling you that your wounds are not welcome, and slowly, you stop bleeding out loud, you begin to suffer quietly. But love, real love, does not turn away from pain. It holds space. It leans in. It says, I may not understand, but I will not let you suffer alone. Anything less is not love. It is abandonment. Ninth, never tolerate the constant testing of your boundaries. Boundaries are not walls. They are expressions of respect. But those who do not respect themselves often cannot respect others. They will push. They will poke, they will find the loopholes, and when you finally say enough, they will accuse you of being rigid, cold, or unforgiving. But boundaries are not punishments, they are necessities. Anyone who resents your limits does not value your well-being, and you have a right to peace, not just survival. And 10th, the most subtle yet dangerous behavior to never tolerate is spiritual superiority. There are people who use spirituality as a shield for their ego. They speak of enlightenment, of energy, of love and light, but cannot apologize, cannot admit fault, cannot sit in discomfort. They elevate themselves while dismissing others as unawakened. This is not transcendence. This is narcissism in disguise. And when you are close to it, you begin to feel like the problem for being human. You begin to hide your anger, your grief, your imperfections, just to stay in the light of their approval. But the soul was not made to live in fragments. The soul was made to be whole, even in its mess, even in its anger, even in its grief. To tolerate any of these behaviors is to tell yourself that your pain does not matter, that your needs are too much, that your voice is too loud, that your truth is too inconvenient. And slowly, the parts of you that once sparkled begin to dim. Not because you are weak, but because you are trying to survive in an environment that is not safe. You do not owe anyone your silence. You do not owe anyone your tolerance. You do not owe anyone the sacrifice of your soul. The soul, when ignored too long, does not simply fade, it revolts. It revolts in the form of fatigue, of quiet resentment, of persistent illness, of dreams that no longer make sense. It revolts in whispers at first, then in wildfires that destroy anything inauthentic. You may think you are being noble by tolerating the intolerable, but you are not being noble, you are being erased. To reclaim your life, you must first reclaim your inner court of discernment. You must trust the signals you dismissed. That sense of tension in your chest when someone speaks sweetly but acts cruelly. That exhaustion that follows an interaction where you had to become someone else just to be tolerated. That sadness after being around those who claim to love you but never really see you. These are not random feelings, these are psychic alarms. They are your unconscious mind banging on the door of your waking life and saying, this is not safe, this is not truth, and this is not for you. To evolve, to truly individuate, to become the integrated, whole person you were meant to be, you must protect your integrity like a sacred flame. Because no matter how much light you pour into others, it will never be enough for those who drink darkness to quench their thirst. Let us return to each of the behaviors we named. Look at them not just as red flags in others, but also as mirrors. You are not only asked to reject them in the world, you are asked to root them out within yourself.
Have you manipulated in fear of losing control? Have you blamed others to avoid facing shame?
Have you withheld affection because vulnerability felt dangerous?
Have you laughed at someone's dream because you were ashamed of your own?
Have you invalidated your emotions, calling yourself weak for needing comfort?
Have you tried to change someone instead of accepting their difference?
Have you said sorry without changing, just to make the discomfort stop? Have you looked away from the pain of someone close because it triggered something unresolved in you? Have you disrespected someone's boundary, even gently, because you felt entitled to more of them?
Have you judged another's path as less spiritual because it did not look like yours?
The journey of consciousness is not one of superiority, it is one of radical responsibility. When you commit to never tolerating these behaviors from others, you also commit to cleansing your own shadow. And this, dear one, is the hardest path. But it is also the most holy. Because the goal is not just to avoid toxicity, it is to become so attuned to truth that toxicity cannot hide in you or around you. It is to become so devoted to love, not the sentimental kind, but the fierce, disciplined, healing kind, that anything unloving feels foreign to your nervous system. And make no mistake, when you begin to live this way, you will lose people. You will become too much for some and too little for others. You will disappoint those who only liked you for your compliance. You will confuse those who thrived on your uncertainty. You will terrify those who depended on your silence to maintain their illusion of innocence.
Let them go. Let them call you selfish.
Let them call you cold.
Let them say you've changed. Because you have.
You are no longer abandoning yourself to preserve connection. You are no longer betraying your soul for temporary peace. You are no longer shrinking to fit into cages you were never meant to enter. You are remembering. And this remembering is not a moment, it is a lifelong practice. You will forget again. You will slip into old patterns. You will say yes when you meant no. You will tolerate what you swore you wouldn't. And then you will catch yourself. And instead of shame, you will choose curiosity. You will ask, what wound was I trying to protect? What story was I still believing? And in this reflection, you will return to yourself with gentleness. Because even in your missteps, you are growing. Even in your regression, you are awakening. The psyche is not linear. It is cyclical, layered, paradoxical. You are allowed to be both broken and beautiful, both wise and learning, both certain and afraid.
But no matter what, you are not allowed to forget your worth.
And here is the truth most people will never say out loud. Some people benefit from your unworthiness. They need you to believe you are the problem so they can stay comfortable. They need you to second-guess yourself so they never have to change. They need your tolerance because they have none for themselves. But you were not put here to cushion the blow of someone else's avoidance. You were not created to carry the unhealed shame of others. You were not born to become a graveyard for other people's shadows. You were born to be whole, to speak truth even when your voice shakes, to walk away even when you love them,
To begin again, even when it terrifies you.
to honor the sacred boundary between self-sacrifice and self-destruction. You are allowed to choose peace over chaos. You are allowed to choose growth over familiarity. You are allowed to choose truth over comfort. You are allowed to choose yourself not in spite of love, but because of it. Because when you love yourself deeply, fiercely and truly, you raise the bar for everything around you. You stop trying to fix what is not yours. You stop trying to save those who refuse to swim. You stop waiting for someone to validate what your body already knows.
And that knowing is your liberation.
You will no longer tolerate emotional starvation and call it humility. You will no longer tolerate fragmented connection and call it loyalty. You will no longer tolerate spiritual bypassing and call it wisdom. You will no longer tolerate being needed instead of being loved. You will no longer tolerate being visible only when you're useful. You will no longer tolerate being quiet so others can stay loud in their illusions.
Because now you see, now you feel,
Now you know, this is your awakening. Not the kind with fireworks, but the kind with quiet resolve. Not the kind with applause, but the kind with holy solitude. Not the kind that changes your life in a moment, but the kind that changes you, breath by breath, until your very presence becomes a boundary. You are no longer waiting to be chosen. You are choosing,
and that is everything.
You are no longer tolerating what kills your soul slowly. You are choosing what lets it live loudly. Because you are no longer afraid of who you are without their approval. You are becoming who you were before the world told you to shrink.
And that self-brave, sacred and sovereign is the one the world truly needs.
Go forth, then, with compassion that has edges, with love that knows when to walk away, with truth that no longer apologizes. And never again forget what you tolerate teaches others how to treat you, but more importantly, it teaches you how to treat yourself. The choice is always yours.
Choose well.